Hi everyone, my name is Alex, and I'm ethnically Georgian and Ukrainian. Given my background, you could probably guess how I feel about Russia. Russia has invaded both Georgia and Ukraine and has committed crimes in both countries. The most polite term Ukrainians use for Russians is trolls. Trolls, I mean not internet trolls like you hear in the West, but like trolls, like woodland creatures from World of Warcraft. That's how bad Russia's image is in Ukraine and in most post-Soviet countries. I'm sharing this so you know where my bias comes from. I admit I'm biased, but I've seen Russia's actions firsthand. I was in Georgia during 2008 invasion, and I traveled to Ukraine in 2014 when Crimea was taken. I try to be as objective as I can be, and the purpose of this video is simply to explore why Russia sucks. Now, fully explaining and exploring every way Russia sucks would probably take an entire lifetime, and I have other things to do. So in this video, I'm going to focus on the biggest reasons, the historical reasons, the political reasons, the cultural reasons, and the deeply disturbing ways they continue to reinforce one another. So let's begin. For centuries, Russia has been a pain in the ass for everyone. Let's try to answer the hardest questions first. Why are they like this? What the fuck is wrong with them? Did they ever have a chance to take a different path? Every country has both good and bad people. Humanity has survived nearly every kind of disaster, and almost anything can happen anywhere. But Russia is a unique moral wasteland. I'm going to divide this chapter into 4 parts: internal relationships, the full picture, the Russia that might have been, and the way of Moscow. Time after time, we see reactions to violence and tragedy in Russia that go beyond what many would recognize as normal human behavior. You can hear it in private phone calls. You can see it in the behavior of religious leaders. You can see it in the attitudes of ordinary citizens. Again and again, the same qualities appear: coldness, detachment, and horrifying indifference. In this video, I will show you specific examples of how widespread and unmistakable this pattern has become. The examples come from the recent events across different regions of Russia and include a range of sources such as leaked phone calls, reports from human rights organizations, and social research. Today, they illustrate that it's not limited to one time or place. What is happening in Russia needs to be studied. When was the last time you heard a major religious leader in another country claim that killing people does not violate the 10 Commandments? When was the last time you saw a religious leader bless bombs? The decay of Russian state and society is visible at many levels. It appears in small and mundane, and it appears in horrifyingly large. The unraveling has deep historical roots. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s brought sudden and chaotic change to a society already morally confused. Institutions weakened, social trust collapsed, authoritarianism, corruption, repressions, and violent political upheaval became deeply entrenched. Later in the video, I will explore the history behind this moral confusion and explain how Russia reached this point. But first, I want you to hear how this decline appears in everyday conversations. I'm going to quote several leaked or recorded phone calls involving captured Russian soldiers speaking with their families back home. Listen carefully, then decide whether these reactions sound normal. All sources will be included in the description. Feel free to read further and read in detail if you want. I'll leave it down there. In one recording, a Russian soldier called his mother and said, "Mom, I have been captured. I'm in Ukraine." She responds, "Buy dollars." Here's the video.
Мама, я в плену. На Украине.
На Украине. Доллары купи. Доллары купи.
Her son tells her that he has been captured in a war, and his mother responds, "Buy dollars." Among mammals, the bond between a parent and its offspring is often the strongest bond found in nature. A tigress raises her cubs for 2 or 3 years before they separate. An orca may remain connected to its offspring for life. These relationships are generally defined by protection, attachment, and the instinct to keep the offspring alive. Aggression or indifference towards the offspring is the exception. Human beings are not fundamentally different. The relationship between a mother and her child is normally built around love, concern, and the instinct to protect. We do not know how evolution will shape us in the future, but no other mammal appears to respond to the news that his child has been captured in a war by immediately worrying about the exchange rate. No tigers, no whales, and not what most people would consider a normal human response. This is not an isolated incident. What we see is apathy, emotional detachment, and dehumanization. In another recording, a captured Russian soldier calls his wife for the first time in a long time since he has been deployed to Ukraine. She answers the phone by saying, "I'm at work. Call me later." Have you ever heard anything like this? And which examples are we supposed to choose? There are so many. Here's another one. One Russian soldier was told that he was being sent to participate in military exercises, and this is quite common in Russia. They do that a lot. Instead, he was sent into Ukraine. Eventually, he was captured, as it happens. While in captivity, he called his mother, and this was their conversation, and I quote, "Mom, do you understand that they deceived me? They sent me here to fight. They sent me here to kill peaceful civilians. Do you understand?" His mother asks, "What happened to your tank?" "It stopped working," he tells her. "My own men abandoned me. This officer abandoned me. My commander abandoned me. They just left me there. If I had not surrendered, they would have killed me. Do you understand?" He is crying, and his mother asks, "So your tank broke?" "Yes, it stopped." "Why? Was there something wrong with the engine?" Her son just told her that his government deceived him, that they sent him into another country to kill peaceful people, that his own men abandoned him, his officer abandoned him, his commander abandoned him, they left him alone in enemy territory to die, and she is focused on diagnosing the tank. If this were one case, 2 cases, or even 100, we might still dismiss them as exceptions, but we cannot, because this is not one dysfunctional family. This is not one strange mother or one bizarre phone call. It is a broader pattern. Studies, surveys, human rights organizations, and social researchers have all documented widespread apathy and indifference towards violence and tragedy across parts of Russian society. So the question is no longer whether this pattern exists. The question is, how did it become so widespread? And how did an entire society become so comfortable with it? Okay, but let us step back and look at the full picture. Russia is waging one of the clearest wars of territorial conquest in the 21st century. By end of 2025, estimates placed Russian battlefield casualties at well over 1 million. More than 1 million people killed, wounded, or missing, and Russia has still not produced a national anti-war movement remotely proportional to the scale of the disaster. Yes, some Russians protested, thousands were arrested, some were beaten, imprisoned, fired, threatened, or forced into an exile. Those people deserve credit, and those are very brave people. But there has never been a march of hundreds of thousands throughout Moscow demanding an end to the war. Instead, the state criminalized dissent, crushed the opposition, and persuaded much of the population to adapt. The patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church blesses the war. Kirill has told Russian soldiers that dying while carrying out their military duty can wash away their sins. He has defended Russia's violence as though the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," comes with a special exemption whenever the Kremlin asks nicely. Put these things together: the phone calls, the indifference, the dead soldiers, the imprisoned protesters, the priests blessing weapons, the families treating war like an irritating administrative problem. Once you assemble the puzzle, it becomes obvious that something much deeper is happening in Russia. At some point, there are good and bad people everywhere stops being an adequate explanation. We are looking at a society in which cruelty has become ordinary, submission has become respectable, and death has become background noise. How did Russia get here? This cannot be explained by Putin alone. It cannot be the result of 10 years, 20 years, or even 30 years. The roots go much deeper. One of the people who spent her life trying to understand those roots was Valeria Novodvorskaya. She was one of the bravest and the most intelligent political descendants Russia has ever produced. Naturally, the Soviet government declared her insane and locked her up in a psychiatric hospital. That was one of the Soviet Union's favorite tricks. If the person looks at the system clearly and concludes that it was evil, the system declares that person mentally ill, because in the Soviet Union, sanity itself was suspicious. One way of summarizing Novodvorskaya's argument is what we might call the theory of 5 traditions. According to this interpretation, Russian civilization emerged from a catastrophic mixture of radically different political and cultural traditions. Slavic humanism, steppe irresponsibility, Scandinavian individualism, the Byzantine interpretation of Christianity, and the Mongol imperialism. Let us begin with the tradition Russia lost. Before Moscow dominated the land of Rus, cities such as Novgorod and Pskov developed political system very different from the autocracy that followed. Novgorod was governed partly through a popular assembly known as Veche. The Veche participated in decisions concerning war, peace, laws, officials, and the selection of princes. The prince did not automatically own the city. He could be invited, he could be restricted, and if the people no longer wanted him, he could be told to fuck off. Even Alexander Nevsky, one of the most sacred heroes in Russian historical memory, has a turbulent relationship with Novgorod. Had a turbulent relationship with Novgorod and was repeatedly invited back and pushed aside. Think about that. The man later turned into saint and national icon was still treated like a public official. Useful when needed, dismissed when he became a problem. That was one possible future for Russia. A network of commercially connected city-states in which rulers faced limits and political participation had room to develop. But Russian history did not follow the path of Novgorod. It followed Moscow. And Moscow learned a very different lesson about power. The Principality of Moscow was once only one of the several competing centers in the land of Rus. It was not freest, it was not most culturally advanced, it was not most commercially important, but it became the most ruthless. While other principalities resisted Mongol domination in different ways, Moscow learned how to operate inside the system. Its rulers cooperated with the Khans, collected tributes for them, suppressed rivals, and gradually used Mongol authority to strengthen their own positions. Moscow did not defeat the imperial system at first, it mastered it. Then it inherited it. As Moscow grew stronger, it destroyed the alternative represented by Novgorod and Pskov. Novgorod was absorbed in 1478, Pskov followed in 1510. Their Veche assemblies were abolished, and their bells, the symbols used to summon the people, were removed. The message was simple: the age of citizen was over. The age of subject has begun. Russia could have inherited Novgorod's political tradition. Instead, it inherited Moscow's appetite for centralized power, territorial expansion, and obedience. And Moscow did not stop with political power, it also wanted religious supremacy. In 1588, Patriarch Jeremiah II of the Constantinople arrived in Moscow seeking financial assistance. Moscow welcomed him with ceremony, gifts, and hospitality. It also placed him under enormous pressure and refused to let him go until he agreed to elevate the Moscow church to the status of patriarchate. For months, Jeremiah was treated simultaneously as honored guest and as a man who was not entirely free to leave. Eventually he agreed. In 1589, Moscow received its patriarch. This story captures something essential about Russian state. The gifts and threats arrive together. The embrace and the imprisonment happens at the same time. Moscow tells you that you are its honored brother while quietly locking the door. The political style did not disappear, it became a tradition. Moscow used stronger powers to defeat its rivals, absorbed neighboring states, destroyed alternative political traditions, and presented its own growing authority as a sacred destiny. And centuries later, what do we get? A patriarch who blesses war, a government that invades its neighbors, a population trained to confuse obedience with patriotism, and a mother whose son calls from captivity, crying that he was deceived and abandoned, while she asks what happened to the tank. Novodvorskaya's theory is not a scientific formula. It does not explain every Russian person or every event in Russian history, but it identifies the traditions that repeatedly won. Participatory government lost, imperial centralization won, individual conscience lost, submission won, Christian mercy lost, the state turned religion into a weapon, and once that pattern had been repeated for centuries, Putin didn't need to invent completely new Russia. He only needed to reactivate the old one. Of course, this still does not explain everything. History may explain autocracy, it may explain imperialism, it may explain why institutions reward obedience and punish conscience, but it still cannot fully explain how a mother hears that her son has been captured in a war and immediately thinks about buying dollars.
Доллары купи!
Some things are beyond political theory. Some things simply make you wonder whether the country should stop trying to be an empire and attempt something more suited for its abilities, like a bakery, perhaps, a gas station, or a very large parking lot. Anything that does not require invading its neighbors and threatening the survival of human civilization. History explains where the system came from, but what does the system look like in everyday life? Sometimes it looks violent, sometimes it looks oppressive, and sometimes it looks so fucking ridiculous that all you can do is laugh. Which brings us to Russian propaganda. On May 31st, 2018, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un in North Korea. The meeting itself is not important. It was a meeting between representatives of two of the worst regimes in the world. What matters is this photograph that they took. Here is the original. Kim Jong-un does not look particularly happy to see Lavrov. Apparently, Russian state television found this unacceptable. So when the photograph appeared on Russia 1 channel, Kim suddenly had a smile. They photoshopped a smile on the dictator of North Korea. Just think about that. North Korea has spent decades building one of the most extreme personality cults in human history. Its propaganda has attributed superhuman accomplishments to the Kim family, rewritten history, and then treated its rulers like divine beings. And even North Korean propaganda looked at this photograph and apparently thought, yeah, that's fine. But Russian state media looked at the same picture and decided, no, Kim Jong-un needs to look happier about meeting Sergei Lavrov. This is how fucking insecure and insane Russian propaganda is. They were not satisfied with securing a meeting with the dictator of North Korea. They needed the dictator of North Korea to look excited about it. And when he did not smile in reality, they simply gave him a smile. Russian propaganda looked at North Korea and said, you people are not manipulating reality hard enough. The channel host, Dmitry Kiselyov, denied that the photograph have been altered. He claimed the difference resulted from the photographic technology capturing different facial expressions. Which is fascinating because apparently Russian cameras can photograph expressions that never appeared on the original face. Maybe that is the real technological superiority Russia keeps talking about. North Korean population believes that they won a soccer match with Brazil. Russian population knows that North Koreans never won a soccer match with Brazil. Here, the difference between North Korea and Russia end. That's it. And to end the subject, I'm just going to quote one of the Russian opposition leaders, Ilya Yashin. That's what he said about this situation. And I quote, "They are testing it on the gloomy North Korea dictator, but tomorrow they'll make us all happy. With a joyful smile, Russians will welcome news of price raises, utility rate hikes, and subsidies to oligarchs." That's what he said. And these things happened, so he was right. Yeah, congratulations. Near the Siberian town Minsk, coal mining had caused a serious pollution problem. Residents complained that coal dust from near mines was damaging the environment and threatening their health. They even organized protests demanding the mining operations to be moved farther from the town or made cleaner. Local authorities heard the complaints and took action eventually. What did they do? Did they reduce the pollution? Did they regulate the mines? Did they protect the people living there? No, of course not. In December 2018, when the snow turned black from soot and coal dust, municipal workers painted it white. They painted the fucking snow. The painted area was not hidden somewhere out of sight. It was a children's sledding hill outside a municipal recreation center, decorated for the New Year's holiday. Families brought their children here to play. Then one woman reached down and touched the snow. Here's the video.
Здесь чудеса творятся. Если потрогать горку руками, а потом эти руки заснять, мы увидим, что горка покрашена краской. Горка-то из снега, вот, она из снега. Сегодня теплая погода, а чуть пониже краска, водоэмульсионка. Смотрите, вот они, подтеки воды.
White sticky paint came off her hand. You can see the stains, she says in the video. It even sticks, she says. And she holds up her paint-covered fingers. This may be the most Russian solution to pollution imaginable. The people complained that the snow is black because of the air is filthy. The authorities do not clean the air. They do not stop the pollution. They simply repaint the evidence. Problem solved. At least until somebody touches it, right? The mayor later apologized and ordered the paint removed. He said the incident had spoiled the residents' New Year mood. Not the coal dust was the problem, not the pollution, not the possibility that children were playing in contaminated snow. That doesn't matter. The paint spoiled the mood. That's what matters. This is Russian propaganda in its purest form. Reality looks bad. Don't change reality. Paint it white. In December 2018, Russia held a technology forum for promising young students in the city of Yaroslav. Among the attractions, there was a character called Robot Boris.
Кто-то из ребят посвятит себя робототехнике, тем более, что на форуме у них есть возможность посмотреть на самых современных роботов.
Я хорошо знаю математику, но я хочу еще научиться рисовать и музыку писать.
А вот танцевать робота Бориса уже научили, и причем довольно неплохо.
Boris could walk, Boris could talk, Boris could sing, Boris could even dance. Russian state television channel, Rossiya 24, proudly presented Boris as an example of country's most advanced robotics. Mother Russia has done it. Forget Boston Dynamics, forget Honda, forget Japanese. Russia had finally built a humanoid robot capable of walking, speaking, and dancing. There was only one minor technical problem. It was a man in a robot suit. People watching the broadcast quickly noticed several suspicious details. The robot had no visible sensors. Its movement looked strangely human. And in one photograph, you could literally see the neck of the man inside the costume. Boris was actually a commercially available robot costume called Alyosha, designed for parties and public events. To be fair, the event organizers did not say that it was a real robot, but they didn't say it was a fake robot. It's just that Rossiya 24 looked at this man dancing inside a plastic suit and thought, Yes, this is the future of Russian technology. So, Russia did not invent Terminator, it invented something even more Russian, a state television journalist who cannot tell the difference between artificial intelligence and a man wearing a helmet. In the West, people worry that robots will replace humans. In Russia, humans replace robots, and the state television hopes nobody notices. That's Russia for you. The previous examples are funny. A photoshopped smile, a painted snow, a man dancing in a robot costume, but the final lie in this chapter is not funny. It has produced well over 1 million Russian casualties and nearly 2 million combined military casualties. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, the message echoed throughout Russian propaganda was clear. Kiev would be taken in 3 days. The Ukrainian government would collapse. Russia would demilitarize and denazify the country before the West even had time to react. Russian forces rushed towards Kiev. Paratroopers attempted to seize Hostomel airport. Russian state media prepared the population for the rapid and glorious victory. Taking Kiev in 3 days was not merely some random internet joke. It reflected what Russian leaders, military planners, and propagandists clearly expected to happen. As of today, as I'm recording this video, the full-scale invasion has lasted for 1,587 days. The Ukraine war has lasted 1,587 days. For comparison, the First World War lasted approximately 1,568 days. Russian 3-day war has now lasted longer than World War I. And Kiev is still standing. And the Ukrainian government is still standing. Ukraine is still fighting. The war also exposed one of Russia's oldest and the most successful propaganda myths. That Russia has the second most powerful military in the world. Today, as the joke goes, Russia has the second most powerful military in Ukraine. Russia failed to take Kiev. It was driven out of northern Ukraine, and after more than 4 years of war, it still has not completely captured the 4 Ukrainian regions it illegally declared part of Russia. More than 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed, wounded, or gone missing. Fathers, brothers, husbands, sons, all sacrificed for territorial ambitions that Moscow still has not achieved. The Kremlin lied about the strengths of its military. It lied about capabilities of its equipment. It lied about the readiness of its soldiers. It lied to many of those soldiers about where they were going and what they would be doing. It lied about Ukraine. It lied about NATO. It lied about reasons for the invasion. It lied about everything. And slowly, even some Russian most loyal supporters are being forced to confront the truth. It is one thing to Photoshop a smile onto someone's face, to paint polluted snow white, to sell a man in a robot costume as advanced technology. But when your lies send millions of people into a war and produce nearly 2 million military casualties, it's not funny anymore. It becomes lethal. This is the progression of Russian propaganda. First, it asks you to ignore what you can see. Then it asks you to reject what you know. And eventually it asks you to die for something that was never true. Russia does not merely suck at telling the truth. Its lies destroy cities, erase lives, and consume its own people. Russia sucks in every possible sense of this word. There is one major subject I have consciously left out of this video. It's Russia's war crimes. Not because they are unimportant, not because there are too few examples, but because there are far too many. The atrocities committed by Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, and the modern Russian Federation cannot be responsibly covered in a short final chapter. The deportations, the massacres, the torture chambers, the mass graves, the deliberate attacks on civilians, the destruction of entire cities, Bucha alone deserves more than a passing reference. So does Mariupol, so does Georgia, so does Chechnya. So do the crimes committed across centuries of Russian and Soviet imperial rule. Trying to squeeze all of that into an end of this video would reduce human suffering to a list, and I do not want to do that. That subject deserves its own video. Maybe I'll call it Russia is a terrorist state. It sounds good and it's true. And hopefully, by the time I make it, there will be more people here to see it. So, why does Russia suck? It is not because every Russian person is evil. It's not because cruelty exists nowhere else. And it's not because Russia was somehow destined from birth to become what it is today. Russia sucks because at nearly every major turning point, the war's tradition and habit won. Novgorod lost, Moscow won. The citizen lost, the subject won. The conscience lost, the submission won. The truth lost, propaganda won. Religion was turned into an instrument of the state. History was turned into a justification for conquest. Human beings were turned into a resource to be spent. And the lies were turned into a substitute for reality. When the snow became black, they painted it white. When Kim Jong-un did not smile, they gave him a smile. When Ukraine refused to collapse, they told the population victory was still around the corner. When the robot was fake, they broadcasted it as real. And when Russian soldiers died by hundreds of thousands, the state simply found more soldiers. This is the system. It does not solve problems. It conceals them. It does not protect people. It consumes them. It does not confront failure. It rewrites failure as victory and demands that everyone applaud. But reality does not disappear because Russian media edits the footage. Black snow is still black beneath the paint. A man in a costume is still not a robot. A failed invasion is still a failed invasion, and an empire is still an empire no matter how many times it calls itself a victim. Russia had other possible futures. It could have chosen political freedom. It could have chosen cooperation with its neighbors. It could have chosen to become a normal country instead of constantly trying to become a larger one. It still can. But before Russia can become something better, it has to stop lying about what it is. And the rest of the world has to stop believing those lies. That is why I made this video. Because Russia does not only suck for Ukrainians, it does not only suck for Georgians, it does not only suck for the countries it invades, threatens, occupies, and destabilizes. Russia sucks for Russians too. It has sacrificed their freedom, their prosperity, their future, and now their lives, all to preserve an empire that should have ended a long time ago. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, please.